Mitch, thanks for being here. Maybe just to kick things off, tell us a little bit about acoustic leak detection. What's FIDO building in that category of the market, and how are you impacting O&M decisions at utilities?
Hi, Chris. Yeah, thank you for having me. It's great to be here. Acoustic leak detection is something that's existed for centuries. It's been around for as long as we've had pressurized water networks. When water leaks from a pipe, it makes a particular sound, and we've detected leaks on water pipes by listening to them for those sounds for hundreds of years. What FIDO does is it brings AI into that. So we deploy sensors that we manufacture out onto the network that listen and pick up the sounds of that network, and then we use AI. And our AI not only listens for the sounds of the leaks, but it's able to filter out noise. It can filter out electrical interference, it can filter out pumping noise, it can take away all of the distractions that humans can't remove. So traditionally, you'd have a human listening to the pipe to understand whether there's a leak or not. The AI is much more accurate. And our AI can hear up to a mile in distance from each sensor. It can interpret and it can locate and it can pinpoint a leak as a result. So it's taking something that's a very traditional, very understood scientific piece of sort of technology, the understanding that this sound means that there's a leak, and it's applying AI and machine learning to be able to interpret that and to get more accurate results.
Mm, no, absolutely. Curious, from a deployment standpoint, when you have a utility who wants to deploy FIDO or has, a leak detection need, what do you think those customers need to do to prepare themselves to work with FIDO? How can they organize themselves accordingly, whether it's from a staffing, procurement, or even some of the decisions that they might have to make after FIDO is deployed?
I think that perhaps in anticipation of deploying FIDO, so a kind of ahead of deploying our sensors, the first challenge that we're always going to have is availability of network information. So typically GIS. So being able to get hold of GIS data, to be able to take that from the network, to plan out, to load that into our systems so that we can understand where the sensors will be deployed. That's the first challenge. The second sort of biggest change in how those processes change once you've started using FIDO is that instead of just an alert that tells you you have a leak, you get a very different data set. So what you'll have is absolutely points of interest that tell you this is an area that you have a leak in, but we're also able to size that. And so instead of just being responsive to an alert, typically a water utility would have an alert on their network and they would send somebody to investigate that. Actually, what we're doing is sizing that, and we're at a point now where we're able to type those leaks. So we can tell you what type of leak it is, and we can tell you what size it is. And that means that the whole way that you plan your engineering, your field force around prioritization of activities is kind of turned on its head, because you've now got a lot more options, you have a lot more information, you have a lot more power to be able to optimize your field force, and it's taking all of that data and that insight and putting that into your operational planning.
Yeah, I think Fido's just done a great job of really appreciating how this technology fits into their workflows. We see plenty of leak detection technology that's very imprecise, but it may be very cheap, but you get what you pay for. And, this is one part of a larger operation. We want people to go and fix their non-revenue water, and in order to do that efficiently, having real precision in the detection is so important. And I think you've seen that time and time again, and even head-to-head RFP processes where there's just a level of precision and detection that competitors who've been in this market for a long time can't compete with. And I think another piece of consideration is certainly the user experience that you guys have built. Oftentimes, FIDO is being deployed through a third-party field team. And so, you might have to be responsible for the training and the safety of those individuals, but, that they, in order to do that in a scalable way, you might be time zones away from that group. And I think, there's several ways to kind of cut through that, but, one way is to build a build a very intuitive product, which I think you've had. But maybe talk a little bit about that. The field app that FIDO has built. How you kind of think about things along those lines, like who's our end user and how are they going to be using this in their processes. How important has that been to get the technology and market?
So I think you're entirely right. One of the most important parts of the kind of FIDO journey has been getting that interface right. Uh, Effectively, all of the acoustic logger technology and the AI that sits around that is a tool. And it's a tool that's operated by a human who's out in the field, who's doing a job, who's out digging the street and looking for leaks. And so we've built the app with that user in mind. So this is a mobile phone app. So it sits on a cell phone, and it means that the engineer can collect data through a simple interface that's been built by engineers for engineers. So it's been built with engineers contributing to the design overall to give them what they need in a way that really works. And actually, you make a really important point around, engineers can be in very difficult conditions. They can be in remote areas. They can be in very different time zones to us, for example. And so as part of that, we've built the Ask Fido function. That's again another layer of AI, what's called a semantic layer, which really just means chat capability that can answer questions. It can support engineers while they're out in the field and giving them information on how to deploy, on what to do, on what to look for, on what's happening on the network. And it can give them that coaching and guidance and support. But ultimately, it's a tool that's used by engineers. AI is a fantastic advance. It's a fantastic piece of technology that enables us to get a better insight out of data, but it still doesn't dig the street. So it has to be presented to the user in a way that's accessible to them. And I think that's one of the areas that FIDO absolutely excels in.
Yeah, maybe just to bring it to life a little bit. I mean, is there a customer that you think is a good case study for showcasing the technology in a tangible way?
I think I'm going to have to. There's probably more than one actually, and I think if I was asked to showcase a customer, I struggle to pin down to one. I'll try and push my luck and talk about two. So I think the first customer I would talk about would be Epcor, who are down in Arizona. So we work out in Epcor, which is in one of the most water stressed parts of the US. Leakage is a massive problem in that part of the Colorado Valley, and EPCOR, as a fairly new fairly new utility in a fairly newly developed town, is an almost entirely plastic network. So the pipes are there's very little metal in there. It's almost entirely plastic. Typically in acoustic technology, that's a problem. A lot of acoustic technology doesn't work well on plastic. Plastic doesn't resonate noises over the same distance. And we've really been able to work there incredibly effectively, where we're still very, very effective on plastic networks, training our AI to listen for those sound variations on plastic. I think at the opposite end of the extreme, actually, I had to talk about another US customer we have, Highland Park, who are up in the Lakeshore community around northern Chicago. And Highland Park's probably a really good example of post-war metal pipes. But this is it's a fairly small town. It's a really great place. It's kind of high end, so they have a lot of sort of wealthy residents, very big properties. And actually, the challenge there is less around leakage rates; it's more around property damage. And Highland Park have found FIDO to be incredibly useful for pinpointing leaks. And one of the things I speak with the guys at Highland Park and the water commissioners team there. One of the things that they really love about FIDO is the ability to precisely pinpoint within a sort of less than a foot square location for a leak overall. That means they're able to go and identify and mitigate property damage, but also say to their residents, to their ratepayers, we're not going to dig up the whole street, we're not going to dig up your whole drive. We know that the leak's going to be here, and they have absolute confidence in the AI and in the technology to be accurate when they do that.
Yeah, I think you've really become a trusted solution for customers in a really big way, and that's certainly attracted a new group of customers. And so I'm getting to the Aqua Plus product that you have, with the data center build out, things we expect in energy. There's new people in the market building infrastructure and building infrastructure in a really big way. And I think those groups are, understanding continuity in what they're building and ensuring those things, being a good steward in the community that they're building in is also very important. Maybe tell us a little bit about Aqua Plus and, how you've attracted companies like Microsoft and others that, before they go build their next data center, it's important that they go and deploy FIDO on behalf of the local utility.
Absolutely. So our Aqua product is built around the idea that large corporations can have a really dramatic impact on watersheds and on local utilities. They can be very, very large users of water, and so actually these corporates that we work with, people like Microsoft and Meta and Coca-Cola, are really interested in supply chain resilience. They want to know that they will be building their data center or their production plants in an area where they have access to good, regular, safe supply of water. And so, as part of that, they make a commitment into what we call water positivity, which means that they will typically fund us to locate and detect leakage within a network, and we certify those volumes. So we have an external verification partner where we can create create a project with them within the watershed that they're operating to offset their usage. So they fund the repair of as many leaks or the same volume of leakage as they consume, and so they become neutral. Microsoft's a great example of that, particularly with data centers. Microsoft recently made a series of commitments as part of their data center growth. They are planning multiple data centers across the world at the moment, and they made a number of commitments. One of those commitments is that they will be water positive in the communities that they build new assets and new data centers into. And so they will make sure that they are putting more water back into the network than they take out through funding leakage, and FIDO is their partner for delivering that.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate the way that those companies want to be a good steward in the communities that they're building these big infrastructure projects in, but certainly appreciate even more the fact that they want to partner with FIDO to allow them to be that good steward. So it allows us to kind of look at the large infrastructure build out that's going on right now with a lot of excitement. And so maybe to that end, share with us, what do you expect for 2026? Anything, I'm sure there's tons on the roadmap, but anything you're willing to share now that we can look forward to this year?
I think 2026 will be a transitional, it'll be a fundamental year for FIDO's growth. So we've been out in the market, we've been building these partnerships, and we've been developing the product. And actually, we're now entering a phase of rapid growth. And through that, I think the two areas to really look out for at the moment is we're seeing significant uptake in utilities coming to us as their partner of choice for acoustic technologies. We've spoken in the past about buying cycles. Buying cycles in the water industry can stretch for years sometimes. Fido's at the point in our journey where we've now got the presence and the recognition and the confidence of buyers in the technology. So we're seeing that big uptick. I think the other one actually we touched on is around the Aqua Plus project. So we're seeing commitments from our customers, from Microsoft, from Meta, from Coca-Cola and Nestle, food and beverage, right the way through to Gap, for example, who are really pushing very hard for how can we become more water positive? How can we work more closely with FIDO and with the communities that they operate in to offset the impact that they have on those watersheds and on those communities? And that will be an area of significant growth globally, I think, over the next 12 months.
Yeah, I think, it's been so much fun working with you guys, and we've been very lucky to partner with you. And just to that last point, I mean, it's really given us a lens to see how impactful it is to, improve the water infrastructure. Just look for leaks and go and find those leaks. It affects all of us, whether local communities are paying for a ton of water that's being lost and never even making it to their homes. And then, it's attracting, these hyperscalers and other infrastructure companies to build in those local communities, facilitate economic growth. and equality at the same time. Those things really go hand in hand in the U.S. and really all over the world. So it's just been very fortunate for us to be a part of the FIDO partnership and watching the impact that you're making on so many different levels. So we certainly look forward to this year and next year and all the years that we're partnering together. So thanks for being here, Mitch.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Chris.
Great.